Wait a minute, that's not right.
The Bloodline takes a step to try to erase the Usos. Nia and Tiffy continue to grow their partnership, and LA Knight tries to ward off distractions as he prepares for Logan Paul. Okay, in the news! And the news indeed, we are back for SmackDown from parts unknown, as surprisingly this week, they did not say where they were at. Suspiciously, it looked awfully similar to last week, and Terrence Crawford was in attendance yet again, saying it was in his hometown. At least that's what the Street Profits told us. But I guess we will just never know. Anyways, we did not have many matches on the card, so it's tough to make a match of the night, but we did have one match with stakes, so it will be our 6-team tag team match for the #1 contender spot to the WWE Tag Team Championship, being our match of the night. And so we had Legado del Fantasma's Angel and Berto taking on Baron Corbin and Apollo Crews to kick things off. As Crews was jumping off the top rope, Angel landed a devastating jumping knee and then hit a backbreaker, but Corbin was there just in time to break it up. Moments later, it looked like Angel again had things taken care of as he was about to hit the wing clipper, but Crews found a way to flip over top of Angel's shoulder, and so Corbin came in and landed the end of days to move on to next face the Street Profits. Well, Ford and Crews both showed off their athleticism, including a moment where they looked at each other and then both flipped over the top rope onto their opponents that were on the floor. Pretty strange move that they would allow that to happen instead of continuing to fight each other, but it looked cool nonetheless. Well, as the fresher group, the Street Profits eventually gained control and they hit a revelation off of the top rope to advance to then take on Pretty Deadly. Well, I have to admit that Pretty Deadly came out with a pretty good game plan as they faked out the Street Profits, which almost immediately ended in 3 near falls. Nonetheless, they did a good job leaving these Street Profits members in the corner all alone as they were able to go back and forth, double teaming them and keeping them away from their partner. Eventually, however, the Street Profits were able to rally and Ford hit a blockbuster off of the top ropes to advance to then take on the OC. And the OC did pretty much the same thing as Pretty Deadly, trapping both Ford and then Dawkins separately in neutral corners. And this time it looked like it was going to work as the Good Brothers set up for the Magic Killer, but Ford outside of the ring grabbed Anderson's feet that stopped them from finishing the move, and Dawkins then squirmed off of Gallows and rolled him up from behind to advance to take on the final competitors, the Bloodlines, Jacob Fatu and Tama Tonga. Well, this actually kicked off the show when Aldis told the Bloodline that they were being removed from the 6-team tag, but Sikoa said that even though that Tonga Loa was injured in last week's attack and had an eye patch on his right eye, that Jacob Fatu would take his place. Well, Aldis allowed this to happen, and so the Bloodline was in, and they got the most favorable spot entering last. And even though they were much fresher than the Street Profits, who had already defeated 3 teams, Solo Sikoa could not help himself by first choking Angelo Dawkins on the ropes and then landing a punch on him. The Bloodline was in complete control of this one until Jacob Fatu missed a splash in the corner and he landed so hard on his head that he could have concussed himself. Well, this finally gave the Street Profits an opening, and they tried to take advantage, including the move of the night when Montez Ford jumped over the ring post onto the floor that took out everyone. So it looked like the Street Profits had a chance to actually pull this one off, but Ford missed a splash onto Tama Tonga, and then Jacob Fatu ended up hitting a super kick, Samoan drop, and finished it off with an incredible mighty moonsault to get the win for the Bloodline. And now they, even though it is their first match together as a duo of Fatu and Tama Tonga, they are your new #1 contenders. For the Street Profits, they had a really good match in these non-traditional tags, but most of them had been 6-man tags, so they are now just 1-1 in these multi-team tags when it is just the two of them on a team. As for the other teams, well, they have not had much success at all, as Angel and Berto go to 0-3 in these multi-person tags, and Pretty Deadly goes to 0-2 in them, while the OC and Cruz and Corbin are both 0-1. And I guess it's really just a sad state of affairs when all of your contenders for the tag team championships basically have no wins on the year, as both the OC and Cruz and Corbin are 0-2 in all tags, while Pretty Deadly is not much better at 1-6. But regardless, the way the Bloodline looks, I'm not sure anyone can stop them, so good luck to DIY in trying to retain those tag team championships. Well, we did have a couple of other matches, so let's briefly talk about those. In our main event of the night, we had Michin and Bayley take on Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton. Well, Nia and Tiffy attacked Michin from behind as she was walking down the ramp to enter the ring. Well, unfortunately, this was such a bad beatdown, including Michin getting thrown into the steel steps, that she was unable to contribute much to the match for several minutes. But we have to ask Bayley what took her so long to get out there to help Michin. When she finally arrived, Michin was already injured, and Bayley, you should have been right behind Michin. How did Nia and Tiffy get there before you were even there to show up to make your entrance? It is just boggling my mind why you weren't anywhere close. Nonetheless, you did get out there with a kendo stick and put an end to the assault, and then had a really good showing early in the match, basically in a handicap match. You were eventually overwhelmed, and Nia and Tiffy took complete control, with Tiffy even doing a stink face on Bayley that probably tasted more like lollipops and bubblegum than what you might think a stink face to taste like. But let's go beyond that. She also landed that really impressive handspring back elbow onto Bayley. But Bayley somehow found an opening and tagged in Michin, who looked pretty well worn out, but had enough in the tank to do her springboard DDT, in which she used Nia as the springboard. And then Bayley came back in to hit a running knee and landed an elbow drop off the top rope onto Nia, but she was able to kick out with a little help from Tiffy. Shortly thereafter, Tiffy did grab the briefcase and hit Bayley with it as the ref was tending to Michin, and that immediately led to Nia landing an Annihilator to end the match. Well, this was the first match for both sides, so we may not expect much, but maybe this was just another step in Nia and Tiffy's partnership, when they even said before the match that Nia would get Tiffy a brand new briefcase that suited her perfectly, and Tiffy said that she would not use the briefcase against Nia. So we'll just have to wait and see if Tiffy can keep that promise. Lastly, and kicking off the show, we had LA Knight against Santos Escobar. And this was pretty much as you would expect, with Elektra distracting LA Knight throughout the entire match. Early on, she just flat out slapped him, and then later she just kept seeming to want to go into the ring, which kept forcing the ref to stop her. And in the last of those attempts, Logan Paul came out and made a big swing and miss with a right hand, which looked like it was going to put an end to Knight when Escobar went for the Phantom Driver, but Knight was able to counter it and immediately land the BFT to win the match. However, Paul came right back in and attacked Knight from behind, and Escobar joined in on that to double team Knight and ended the segment with a frog splash. Paul then backstage said that that was just a taste of what was to come for SummerSlam, and telling Byron Saxton that he had a big surprise waiting for everyone at SummerSlam. For the match itself, Knight improves to 7-3 in one-on-one matches, while Escobar falls to a still pretty good 5-3 record. Now let's go beyond the mat for SmackDown. As they said they would do, Jade and Bianca called out Fire and Dawn, but when their music hit, they were nowhere to be found, only for them to then attack Jade and Bianca from behind. And they did a pretty good job taking it to them for a little bit, but as you might expect, those two eventually overwhelmed the Unholy Union, and Jade threw Fire into Dawn to end the segment. But it was announced later that Jade and Bianca will indeed get their rematch against Fire and Dawn. A-Town Down Under also interrupted the show, just coming out of the crowd, grabbing microphones, and Waller called out Terrence Crawford, who was yet again in attendance. Crawford did indeed show up, coming out from backstage after he had talked to the Street Profits earlier in the night, and Waller told Crawford that if he took one more step forward, that Theory would knock him out. Pretty strange move by Waller, and Theory didn't seem to want any part of that, but as he attempted to say something to defuse the situation, Crawford immediately knocked him out with one punch. Tough one for Theory. He just can't seem to stay out of harm's way whenever Waller is with him. Saxton also interviewed Andrade backstage, with him again asking Andrade what was next for him. And of course, Carmelo Hayes yet again interrupted Andrade's answer and said that he wanted another shot at Andrade. After Andrade said that he was more like Bronny than like LeBron, Hayes actually agreed with this, saying it was his time now. And you know what? I'm going to agree with Hayes as well. He is also a guy that shouldn't have been drafted anywhere close or at all to where he was drafted, and is probably never going to do anything in the big leagues. So yeah, good job, Hayes. You just made yourself sound really bad, but that's pretty much all you've done so far. So, all right. I agree with you. Good job. Anyways, Andrade agreed to another match with Hayes, so we'll see if he can beat him twice in a row. And lastly, in a pre-taped segment, Cody Rhodes called out Solo Sikoa for a one-on-one face-to-face meetup next week in the middle of the ring. And the show ended with Sikoa agreeing to that meetup. But strangely, he also yet again invoked the name of some former wrestler. I don't know why he keeps doing that, especially if he really is the true tribal chief. Well, anyways, I hope that he gets that out of his head going forward and just focuses on the task at hand as he prepares to take on Rhodes at SummerSlam. And with that, let's go to STFs. And in this week's suspensions, terminations, and fines, we just have a bunch of minor infractions this week. And as always, we'll start with the Bloodline, where Solo Sikoa just could not help himself with the Street Profits. Even though they were in their fourth set of opponents, Sikoa both choked Dawkins and punched him from ringside, so he will get a fine. Then, earlier in the opening match, we saw Elektra try to distract LA Knight about 100 different times, but she did lay hands on him by slapping him earlier in the match, so for that, she will get a fine. Later on, Logan Paul came out and he made a big swing and a miss on Knight, and then later attacked him from behind after the match, in which then Santos Escobar then joined in, overwhelming Knight, and Paul ended with a splash, so both Paul and Escobar will pick up fines. After Jade and Bianca called out Fire and Dawn, the latter two then attacked Jade and Bianca from behind and actually got in a few decent shots before they were disposed of per usual, but nonetheless, they were the instigators, so they pick up a fine, and unfortunately for them, also a championship match that they will probably have a hard time defending. Nia and Tiffy took their partnership to another level by attacking Michin as she went down the ramp during her ring entrance and ended up injuring her for most of the match, but this is still only a fine for both Nia and Tiffy. And lastly, we will note Terrence Crawford is not picking up any sort of penalty, even though he took a big swing, knocking out Austin Theory with one punch. He's just simply not a WWE superstar. The Bloodline continued their dominance now in the tag team scene, so they will have two separate chances at gold. Nia and Tiffy continued their partnership as they look to hold both the WWE Women's Championship and the Money in the Bank briefcase. And LA Knight picks up a win, but also tastes what is to come for him at SummerSlam. I'm Dr. O'Kay, reporting on the WWE, where everything is not okay.